One day in school, when I was 10 years old, we read a poem in our primer called, I believe, Speckbacher's Little Son. It told about a brave little boy who took part in a battle amidst a rain of bullets, picking up bullets for the grown-ups or carrying on some other sort of heroic activity. Our class was enthusiastic, and when the teacher asked us, with a touch of irony, "Now, was that a good poem?" we all shouted emphatically, "Yes!" But he smiled and shook his head and said, "No, it is a terrible poem." He was right. According to the taste and rules of the art of our time, the poem was not good, not subtle, not genuine, and definitely inferior. Nevertheless, it had inspired in us boys a splendid surge of enthusiasm. 10 years later, at the age of 20, I would have had the confidence to declare at once, after a first reading of any poem, whether it was good or bad. Nothing simpler. One glance, the repetition half aloud of a couple of verses sufficed. That was several decades ago, and many poems have since passed through my hands and under my eyes, and today I am again completely uncertain whether or not to attribute value to a poem that is shown to me. Poems are often shown to me, mostly by young people who want a verdict on them, and hope to find a publisher. And the young poets are always astounded and disillusioned when they see that this elder colleague, whom they had believed to be an experienced critic, proves to have no experience at all, but flips through their poems uncertainly, and does not trust himself to say anything about their worth. What I could have accomplished in 2 minutes with a feeling of assurance at the age of 20 has now become difficult, or rather not difficult, but impossible. Moreover, experience is the sort of thing that one imagines in youth must come of itself. But this is not so. Some people have a gift for experience. They acquire it from their school days, if not from their mother's womb. And there are others, of whom I am one, who can live 40 or 60 or 100 years, and in the end, die without having properly learned or even glimpsed what experience is. My certainty of judgment about poems at the age of 20 was based on the fact that, at the time, I loved a number of poems and poets very deeply, and I compared each book and poem almost exclusively with them. If it resembled them, it was good. Otherwise, it was of no account. Today, too, I have my few poets, whom I especially love, some of them the same ones as when I was young. But now I especially distrust poetry that instantly reminds me of the work of one of these favorite poets. It is not my intention, however, to talk about poems and poetry in general, but only about bad poems, those that almost everyone except the poet himself at once regards as mediocre, paltry, and unnecessary. In the course of time, I have read a lot of these poems, and earlier I knew with certainty that they were bad and why they were bad. Today, I am no longer sure about these matters. That certainty, that knowledge, like every habit and every knowledge, on some occasion revealed itself to me as ambiguous. It was at once boring, dry, and lifeless. It was full of holes. Something in me rebelled against it, and in the end I saw it no longer as knowledge, but as an outmoded attitude, an attitude that lay behind me, and whose former value I could no longer grasp. Today, I have often had this experience. With the unquestionably bad poems, I often feel a desire to defend them, indeed to extol them, whereas the good ones, yes, even the best, seem to me suspect. It is the same feeling that one can sometimes have in the presence of a professor, or an official, or a madman. In general, one knows unquestionably that the distinguished official is an irreproachable citizen, a righteous child of God, a properly recognized and useful fellow being, whereas the madman is simply a poor wretch, sick and unfortunate, whom one tolerates but deplores, since he has no value as a person. But then come days, or at least hours, perhaps when one has had more than usual to do with professors or with madmen, when suddenly the reverse is true. Then you see in the madman a happy person, quiet and self-assured, a wise man, a favorite of God, a man of individual character who is contented and believes in himself. And the professor, on the other hand, at that time seems superfluous, mediocre, a figure of little character, personality, and substance, totally commonplace. Something similar happens to me occasionally with bad poems. Suddenly they no longer seem bad. Suddenly they have a fragrance, a uniqueness, a childlike quality. Their obvious weaknesses and errors are especially touching, are endearing and delightful, and by comparison, the most beautiful poem, which one ordinarily loves, seems a trifle pale, commonplace. Moreover, since the influence of Expressionism has spread, we can see something similar at work in many of our younger poets. As a matter of principle, they no longer write good or beautiful poems. They consider that there are enough beautiful poems and that they themselves have certainly not been born and put into the world in order to turn out even more pretty verses, to continue the game of patience begun by earlier generations. Presumably they are right about this, and their poems sometimes even sound just as touching as used to be the case, only with bad poems. The reason is easy to find. In its origin, a poem is something completely unequivocal. It has a discharge, a call, a cry, a sigh, a gesture, a reaction by which the living soul seeks to defend itself from or to become aware of an emotion, an experience. In this first spontaneous, most important function, no poem can be judged. It speaks first of all simply to the poet himself. It is his cry, his scream, his dream, his smile, his whirling fists. Who would try to judge people's nighttime dreams by aesthetic values, or movements of hand and head, expressions and ways of walking by their expediency? The babe in arms that puts its thumb or toe in its mouth behaves just as intelligently and properly as the author who gnaws his penholder, or the peacock that spreads its fan. No one of them does better than the others. No one is more in the right than the rest. Now, sometimes it happens that a poem, in addition to unburdening and freeing the poet, can also give pleasure to others, can move and touch them. That is beautiful. Very likely this happens when what is expressed is something common to many, possibly all, though this is by no means certain. Here then is the beginning of a vicious circle. Because beautiful poems make the poet beloved, a great quantity of poems come into the world that attempt nothing except to be beautiful, that pay no heed to the original primitive, holy, innocent function of poetry. These poems from the very start are made for others, for hearers, for readers. They are no longer dreams or dance steps or outcries of the soul, reactions to experience, stammered wish images or magic formulas, gestures of a wise man or grimaces of a madman. They are simply planned productions, fabrications, pralines for the public. They have been made for distribution and sale, and they serve to amuse or inspire or distract their buyers. So just this sort of poem finds approval. One does not have to project oneself seriously and lovingly into such poems. One is not tormented or shaken by them. Rather, one sways comfortably and pleasurably in time to their pretty, regular rhythms. Now, at times, these beautiful poems can seem just as questionable and repugnant as anything else that is tamed and adjusted, like professors and officials. And sometimes, when the proper world is completely odious to you and you have an inclination to smash streetlights and set fire to temples, on such days the beautiful poems, all the way up to the holy classics, strike you as a little bit censored, a little bit castrated, all too well approved, all too tame. Then one turns to the nasty poems. Then no poem can be bad enough. But here too disappointment lies in wait. The reading of bad poems is always a short-term pleasure. You quickly get enough of it. So why read? Cannot anyone make bad poems for himself? Try it sometime, and you will find that making bad poems actually gives much more pleasure than reading even the most beautiful ones.
Like, subscribe, notification bell, join the herd.